Okay, so now we're moving on to nutrition, and it's a great pleasure to introduce Kate Fox. Kate's an accredited practicing dietitian based in Sydney and has over 14 years' experience working as a dietitian. She sees one-to-one clients all over the world to help them navigate the nutritional complexities of Prader-Willi syndrome. And I'd just like to add at this stage, we're really lucky with the NDIS because speech therapy, physio and obviously dietary assistance can all be claimed through NDIS now, even in adulthood. Thank you.
Hello everyone, thank you for that introduction. It's great to speak to you all today and to meet so many of you in face-to-face because I run a completely virtual practice specialising in seeing children with Prader-Willi and some adults as well. I'm going to talk very quickly today because I've got a lot on my slides and I'm conscious that you may want some question time. So if there is anything that I rush over, please come and speak to me later. I am around all day. I am focusing predominantly on the 0 to 12 age group because the next talk is going to focus on adolescents and adults. I'm going to talk to you today about why we have these recommendations for children, why do they differ from the general population. I think this helps to explain it to caregivers, teachers, educators, etc., extended family even. We'll talk briefly of the 4 main pillars that I talk about in nutrition: quality versus quantity, balance and variety, fluids and snacks. We'll talk briefly about feeding the whole family, talking about special occasions or celebrations, and if there's time, touch briefly on food and the education settings. So just want you to think about this statement. Food is nutrition, but eating is behaviour. And in Prader-Willi, we have both the physiological aspects of, such as abnormal hypothalamus, abnormal insulin intake, abnormal appetite hormones, body composition, which all lead to reasons for ease of gaining weight. We also have the behavioural side of things, so the rigid thinking patterns, difficulty grasping a once-off. So for any parents, you go somewhere, you allow at one time, then you have to deal with the questions of why can't I have this or repetitive. We also need to limit that non-hungry eating, which is common in children. Are they having a tantrum? Are they bored at home? Are they trying to avoid something at school and they're constantly saying that they're hungry? So we really need to focus on that. And that food isn't just the nutritional side of things, but the behavioural side of eating is really important to help to explain it to other people of why you're doing what you're doing or why you're being so strict with your loved one's diet. Because particularly in this younger age group with infants, toddlers, they may well be within a very healthy weight range. They may even be on the lower end of the healthy weight range. And it's very difficult to explain to extended family members or caregivers why you're being so strict if you can't explain the physiological reasons. Yes, they have a body composition that favours weight gain, but they also go on to develop behavioural issues, which is really, really important that you set up these good habits early on so to carry through with life. Sorry, I am missing the slides. So briefly, quality versus quantity. Quality is, the types of foods that we're eating. A huge emphasis is on nutrient-dense foods, real foods. I love the saying, foods that your grandparents would recognise as food. Complex carbohydrates, lean proteins, healthy fats, a good intake of fibre. None of this is necessarily groundbreaking information in nutrition. It's all general healthy eating advice. It all comes under the umbrella of the Mediterranean diet. So the Mediterranean diet isn't necessarily just about food. It is also about a style of eating. So we want to eat as a family. We want to eat together. We want to have conversation away from food, during these meals. We want to have good emphasis on quality ingredients and fresh ingredients. What we want to avoid necessarily, and I'm not a dietitian that says you can't necessarily have something, but we want to avoid non-nutritive sweeteners. They don't necessarily lead to any nutrition. Empty calories, and this is really important for young infants just starting out on solids, that feeding just to fill. So whilst there's nothing wrong with infant rice cereal, it doesn't necessarily contain the nutrients that we want our children to be eating to have optimal brain development and optimal growth. So we don't want to just feed them to fill. We want to be providing them with a nutrient-rich diet. The quantity refers to the food portions. So these are usually smaller than national nutritional guidelines. Here in Australia, we have the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating, and that isn't necessarily something that we want to be focusing on for people with Prader-Willi, particularly around the fruit size portions. You may have heard the 2 and 5, 2 serves of fruit, 5 serves of vegetables. That isn't necessarily something that we need our children to be eating with Prader-Willi, because a serve of fruit is very large. So we want to be restricting the portions of these foods rather than the types of foods in their diet. Portions, however, particularly speaking at a very population level like we are today, is very difficult to give you an exact because they're highly dependent on the individual. Factors such as weight, height, activity level, body composition will all affect how much your child or individual can eat. So they need to be very tailored to the individual. So please don't look at social media and watch parents post a photo of their meal and say my child isn't eating that much or they're eating too much. Your child may do more activity than the next child, or they may have a different body composition, etc. So the portion guidelines are to be used as a starting point only. Some children will need more and some children will need less. As a guide, as a starting point, it's good to use your child's hands. So this, when I'm talking about a child, we're talking about, even up to 12 years old, but anywhere from starting solids upwards. Obviously, an infant isn't going to eat a whole palm or a whole fist full of food to begin with. However, it's a starting point to help balance your meals. So using your child's hand as a guide, because your child is very small, they have a smaller hand than their neurotypical age peer. So we want to use their palm of their hand or their fist to help measure their portions. As a guide, 1 fist per meal for carbohydrates and proteins, 2 fists per meal for non-starchy vegetables. Fruit is a flat palm size, no more than twice a day. And nuts and seeds would be a flat palm size, no more than once a day, as a starting point. Some very basic photos here of some meals. I also have a plate model that you can kind of gauge your child's plate off. We have a small child-size plate. So this is roughly 20 centimetres in diameter. It's not a dinner plate, it's more of a bread and butter size plate. A quarter being lean proteins, another quarter being high fibre carbohydrates or grains or starchy vegetables, and half the plate being non-starchy vegetables. What if your child doesn't eat a whole plate of vegetables? That's okay, but it's a starting point. So this is where we don't want to be having, half a plate of rice or half a plate of carbohydrate in some description. Fats, if it isn't contained in the food, so many meats are quite high in fat, so you don't necessarily need to add fat to that meal. You can add a small amount, but it's usually around a thumb size. So the balance and variety is really important. So we want to have a balance in our meals to help with the glucose absorption and the carbohydrate digestion. So we want to pair our foods, or particularly our carbohydrates, with either proteins and fats. Proteins, carbohydrates, fats, I'm sure you all have a fairly good understanding of what categorises each, or what food is categorised into each group. However, if you don't, I do have some resources available that you can download from my pages, etc., that gives you a few tips of how to balance a meal out if you're struggling there. Carbohydrates are the one thing in our infancy and our toddlers that we don't necessarily want to restrict but we don't want to have a diet, particularly in Western diets that, most children eat a very high carbohydrate diet. So it's on the lower end of the healthy range, which is contributing to around 45% of the daily energy needs coming from carbohydrates. Very quickly, this is more of a start in solids. So if you've got a very little one, which I do work with the very small infants, it's really important to balance their meals from this early starting point because we are wanting to get enough protein in their diet, we're wanting to get good complex carbohydrates for their brain development, we're wanting good fats in our diet to help satiate them and to help them grow. If you're using purees, you can add flavour and thinning liquids, that's fine. But instead of just giving a child or an infant vegetables, whilst there's nothing wrong with just vegetables, it's not giving them the nutrition that they need for their brain and growth. Very quickly, we'll skip through that just in time. Oops, sorry, how do I go back? Okay. Fluids. This is a really tough topic, I guess, for many of you who have a loved one with PWS. Most kids, as you know, or most adults, individuals with PWS don't necessarily love the taste of water. However, we can try to aim for water and milk in this young age. Milk is very important, obviously, until a year, 2 years of age. Then it becomes more of a, how much fluid are they getting and what is their weight doing? So if your child is still a toddler and they are gaining too much weight, then we need to look at milk intake. However, if they sit on the lower end of the weight range or a healthy weight range and they're not loving water, milk is a completely fine fluid to have. The tricky part of that is if your child is meeting their fluid needs through milk, they're unlikely to want to drink more water because their fluid needs are getting met. So it's a bit of a hard one to get through, I guess. You want to slowly reduce their milk intake and don't be too afraid of some level of dehydration, not to the extent of needing hospitalisation, obviously, but it's okay for them to be on the lower end of their fluid needs to help build their love of water or their intake of water. Because many will say to you that, their child will drink water, but they need to be encouraged to do so. Water should be started from day one of starting solids. Obviously, we don't want to fill our infants up with water, but it needs to be a habit that is learnt from day one of eating. If we're going to eat a meal, we're going to have some water. It just is a sip. That's, to wet their mouth or to clean their mouth out, that's fine. But to start from starting solids, from their ability to drink water, is really important. For older kids, you can build fluids into their mealtime structure. So if, for example, before we eat, we're going to have a drink of water. Obviously, that they need some sort of level of understanding and level of ability to accept that. So it can be built into their day, and you can help with their educators as well. So, if they're at daycare, at that school, trying to get them to have a drink of water in between their breaks or as a brain break. Be a role model. You can't expect your child to drink water if you're not going to. So everybody at the table sits down with a glass of water. Even mum and dad, try and stay away from the wine. So have a drink of water at the dinner table for everyone there and allow your child to actively see you drink that. Include water into play. I think this is a really important one for toddlers, or a really great way of getting your child to drink, because they will often drink more water when they're in the bath or when they're during play time. So it's a really great way of helping their water intake. Snacks are a tricky one. We don't want to necessarily schedule snacks. We want your child to cue for hunger. There is no harm in offering snacks, but snacks need to be a bridge, or they act as a bridge between meal times for small stomachs. They should be much smaller portions, but similar foods than you would be offering at meal times. So there's no need for snack foods. They can just be, proteins, good carbohydrates, and vegetables. Non-starchy vegetables are a great choice. If you are offering carbohydrates, balance those with proteins and fats, and meals and snacks should be greater than 2-hour intervals. So if your child is asking, saying that they're hungry or asking for a snack and it's been 3 to 4 hours since they last ate, you can typically say that that is genuine hunger. If it was only 10, 15, half an hour ago, maybe not. Try and distract them. Feeding the whole family, so I'll touch on very briefly because I know I'm running out of time. Again, be flexible in your mealtime structure. So we've talked about the sequence of events. Don't necessarily feed to the clock. I think this can raise more anxiety in many children if you are unable to meet that 12 o'clock lunchtime for whatever reason. So more so go around, after swimming lessons, we're going to have our snack, or after therapy, we'll have lunch. Eat as family, and this comes under that Mediterranean style of eating. So we want to be a role model for our children. We want to promote, this promotes mindful eating. We want to focus the conversation away from food. So at the dinner table, we talk about our day. Be considerate that your child may not, and this helps with fussy eating if your child has Prader-Willi and is a fussy eater. Parents, you're not sure what to cook, so you don't necessarily need to cook something separate. Don't be afraid of, if your child doesn't necessarily eat the whole meal. Cater to their needs or their abilities by adding something that you know that they do like, but trying to expand their intake of certain foods to go beyond just your typical carbs or their favourite foods. Try not to use food as an emotional reward. That's really important for all kids, and nor restrict it as a punishment. Special occasions. So again, if you want to offer your child a treat food, that is completely your call, but they need to be limited. These are not a weekly, fortnightly, or even monthly occurrence. So, Friday night dinners, fish and chips, pizza, whatever it happens to be, not necessarily something that can happen in a family with Prader-Willi. Nor can there be, cousin's birthday, you can have a regular piece of cake, or extra, if you have a big family, that could add up very significantly. So try to limit that to as less than 5. Not that I like to give a number. Choose restaurants where you're familiar with, or learn the menu in advance. Intercept your child's plate to help reportion that. They have difficulty grasping once off, so if you go out to eat and then you allow something one time, be prepared for the slippery slope that can happen after that. Holidays and Christmases, basically don't overstress. Christmas is one day. You can get your child's diet back onto track in the weeks to come or the days to come. So don't overstress around holidays. Very briefly, early childhood settings, speak with your child about bringing in your own food. If the centre provides food, meet with the director and the chef. Your dietitian can join or give education, staff training. Identify the importance of non-food rewards or celebrations for your child, and advocate for this for the whole centre, if you can. If food is used in an activity or for a special occasion, have a PWS-friendly alternative. The same goes for school settings, so educate and advocate is going to be your main job there. Educate both teachers and students, and don't forget after-school care. For my school-aged clients, the majority of their calories are coming from after-school care, so really focus on that side of things. You can send food with them or try to have a similar snack than they're offering. Written information available for classmates' parents, and that's completely up to you if you choose to do that, but I think it's really important and goes to what Dr. Deepat said earlier about educating your child about Prader-Willi and educating everyone around your child about Prader-Willi. So build a relationship with your child's teacher and separate lunch boxes. So you can't expect a child to eat morning tea and lunch from the same box and save those for 2 breaks. So just in summary, Mediterranean diet, a balance of macronutrients, variety, nutrient-dense foods. In infants, don't just aim to fill. Provide the nutrients that they need: iron, proteins, omega-3 fatty acids. Portions are smaller than national nutritional guidelines, typically, particularly for fruit. Stay strict with water only. Don't introduce sweetened fluids, because once you do, it's very hard to go back. Don't schedule snacks, but feed more to hunger cues. Snacks should still be whole foods, so not new, different foods, because any child will hold out for morning tea if it's going to be a yummy snack food. Parents should be a role model, and extended family need to be respectful of family wishes, but again, you need to educate them in what Prader-Willi means. Families to be mindful of disordered eating in siblings, and if treats are allowed, they're not to be offered weekly, fortnightly or monthly. And that's time for questions.
Thank you, Kate. That's great. One question only. Yeah, thank you. Because Kate will be around.
I'll be around all day.
Thank you, Kate, for your presentation. As a speech pathologist who sees babies from very young, and particularly in that first 12 months, just when a comment I need to make, because many of the children I see aspirate thin fluids, that just offering water when you offer solids, which could be from as young as 4 to 6 months, could be potentially dangerous for some children and they may end up with a chest infection. So if you are looking at doing water, just have a chat to your speech pathologist. It may need to be thickened, slightly thickened with appropriate thickeners for under 12-month-olds. But yeah, it can be a problem for children as they get to 2 and 3. So sometimes water has to be modified, and milk.
Yes, absolutely. So always feed into your child's ability.